believe we're all here now to get at least enough of us to get started. So welcome to the June 1st, 2021 meeting of the Eureka City Council. And today I would like to start the meeting with a roll call, please.
Mayor Seaman,
Here.
Councilmember Castellano,
Here.
Councilmember Arroyo is absent. Councilmember Burgell,
Here.
Councilmember Bauer,
Here.
and Councilmember Moulton.
I'm here.
All right. Now we will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I didn't select anybody in advance, so I'll just go ahead and do it. If you wouldn't mind, please joining me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Do we have a report out of our closed session, Mr. City Attorney Black?
Mayor, no reportable actions were taken in closed session.
Announcements, and today I don't have any presentations or any proclamations. So I will just mention a few things that are happening. Last weekend, I did get to go to see Outer Ruminations, which was a 3-day art festival. It took place in Lolita, kind of combined the best of arts and nature. Our own council member, Leslie Castellano, was one of the founders of that. So I hope she'll talk about it again. But the thing that it meant, it was just so exciting to get out and be at a festival type event with other people. And I'm starting to notice that more and more is sort of returning to life before COVID. I've been listening to the sound of the Mattakit going out every night whenever I hear the whistle. It's very exciting. On June 4th, we're going to have the official grand opening for the Redwood Skywalk, although I know many of us have already been on it and many in the public has as well, but it will be official as of June 4th, which is this Friday. On June 5th, there'll be a soft opening for Arts Alive, which just really starts to feel like things are getting a little bit back to normal. On the 4th of July, we will have fireworks from the city, which means if you have fireworks at home, you don't have to blast them off, and you definitely don't have to do it any day other than 4th of July. So we will provide for you this fabulous fireworks show and just ask you to please keep the celebrations when and where it's appropriate. And then in August, we'll have the return of Friday night markets. So as we appreciate and enjoy all of these things that used to be normal, but now feel like privileges, just remember, get vaccinated. Please get vaccinated. If you're not, wear a mask, keep everybody safe. We're not out of the woods here in Humboldt County, and we want to all see each other and want to have a great time, but we also want to be safe, and we want to continue to have all these great events happen. So that is my message. Things are returning. Let's keep them in good shape. And with that, I will move on to our next item of business, which is the public comment period. And I believe we have one public comment.
We did have a member. Let me see if she's joined us yet. Hang on, this one's back. I don't see if
She's turned her camera on now.
okay, very good.
Kristen, are you the public comment?
Yes.
Okay. So please introduce yourself, and you can go ahead and start your comment.
Awesome. So hello, my name is Kristen Orth-Gordonier. I am a graduate student at Humboldt State University in the Environmental Science and Management Department, and I'm also a project planner with Greenway Partners, and I'm working on a project with Alderon Laird and the Humboldt County Long Range Planning staff on a feasibility study that's funded by the California Coastal Commission about the feasibility of regional coordination of sea level rise planning here locally on Humboldt Bay. As a part of my thesis research and a part of this project, we recently sent out an online survey to city staff, as well as elected officials of actually all local agencies and organizations that may or possibly could be involved in sea level rise planning now or in the future. And if you received this survey, we'd really appreciate if you participate. It would be from my Humboldt email, which is kmo29@humboldt.edu, and it's via SurveyMonkey. That's the platform that we used for the survey. We have had some technical difficulties with SurveyMonkey, so if you didn't receive the email but are interested in taking it, I'd really appreciate it if you just reach out to me. Again, my email is kmo29@humboldt.edu. This week I'll also be sending out a reminder of the survey, so look for it in your inbox if you're interested. And again, we'd really appreciate your feedback and hope that your input can help us understand whether or not people are interested in coordinating and what we could possibly do as far as sea level rise planning. And then on another note, for any of the public members or any of you all as well, the county just released a separate survey also on sea level rise, and that's for general public. It doesn't matter where you live, if you're near the coast at all. You may have seen this on Loco. It's also on the county's Facebook page, or you can Google Open Town Hall Humboldt Sea Level Rise. And again, your input is incredibly valuable on this. So we'd appreciate your input in, well, the public's input in the general survey. Any sort of City of Eureka staff or elected officials, we'd really appreciate your participation in the survey that I mentioned at the beginning. So thank you so much for your time. Hopefully your participation in the surveys. And if you have any questions, again, please feel free to email me at kmo29@humboldt.edu. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comment tonight? I don't see any. All right. We will move on then to public hearings. We have Principal Planner Getz for the SC Zone Metal Shipping Container Text Amendment.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can everybody see the presentation? Thank you. So this is the SC Zone Metal Shipping Container Text Amendment, and the project number is TA-21-0001. And Papa and Barkley has applied to amend the zoning code to allow metal shipping containers or Connex boxes to be used for permanent outdoor storage in the Inland SC Service Commercial Zone District. The Inland SC Zone is primarily located along the east side of Broadway, from the Papa and Barkley site near the southern gateway to Eureka, up to West Washington Street near the north end of Broadway. And there is one small parcel at the corner of Myrtle and West that is also zoned SC. The zoning code currently allows metal shipping containers in the SC zone on a temporary basis not to exceed 30 days. Staff is proposing, and the applicant has agreed with, the addition of language to Eureka Municipal Code Section 155.304.110, which is outdoor storage. And the changes are being made to subparagraph F as in Frank to allow metal shipping containers as outdoor storage in the SC zone district. And that's provided that the containers are located behind the primary structure whenever possible, or if it's physically impossible, then to be as close to the rear of the site as possible. The container cannot be located in the area between the building and front or exterior side property line, and the Connex box must be painted to match or complement the primary structure. The use table for mixed use zone districts will also be updated to add a reference to the outdoor storage code section and to add a footnote that metal shipping containers used for permanent outdoor storage is a principally permitted use if the installation complies with the standards in the outdoor storage section. Otherwise, it's a conditionally permitted use and requires a minor use permit. The Planning Commission held a duly noticed public hearing on May 10th, 2021, during which there was no public testimony. The Planning Commission then voted unanimously to recommend the City Council modify the proposed language to allow shipping containers to be located in the SC zone property for up to 10 years and then be removed. And if the owner wants to utilize the container for more than 10 years, then a minor use permit would be required. For the reasons discussed in the agenda summary related to potential challenges to tracking the time a container is on a site, and the potential for a coastal development permit to be required when a minor use permit is required for a container in the coastal zone in the future, staff is not recommending council incorporate the language proposed by the Planning Commission. Staff is, however, recommending that you hold a public hearing and then introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 155 pertaining to metal shipping containers in the SC Zone District. And I've got a suggested motion for your use. The applicant, I believe, is with us today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? Trying to, Councilmember Moulton.
Can we see that map again, just for reference while we're talking real quick?
Sure.
Thank you. I didn't have a further question. I just wanted to look at the maps more thoroughly while I have the chance.
So Councilmember Burgell, then Councilmember Castellano.
So I just wanted to clarify, Principal Planner Getz, so the Connex box cannot be seen from the street, right? So it's got to be somewhere out of sight view. Is that right?
The possibility exists that it can be seen from the street, especially on a corner lot. So for example, if the Connex box is located behind the building, if you're standing in front of the building, but go around to the side street, you may be able to see it at the rear of the building. And that's part of the reason that we propose that they be painted complementary or matching colors so that they hopefully blend in a little bit more.
Okay. And then secondly, I'm just out of curiosity, what site is that at Myrtle and West? What's the property there?
That is the site where, I'm not sure exactly what's there now. It used to be the insurance agent,
Okay.
chiropractor, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I think they're all, that's the same sort of thing that's still there.
I think there's a salon there, but yeah, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Castellano.
And thank you for the presentation. You know, I'm generally supportive, but a couple questions. You know, I took a look at the service commercial zone for the meeting and remembered that a lot of that zone does have kind of residences mixed in with it, especially in Ward 1, you know, that area kind of between Wabash and Grocery Outlet. And, you know, I know a lot of sort of the backs of buildings are actually people's alleyways, or, you know, I mean, it would be hard to make something like invisible from someone's residence necessarily. And so I'm kind of curious about language around maintaining the painting of the building, you know, or of the box that because in terms of matching buildings, you know, a lot of buildings the paint isn't necessarily maintained, and I could see where even within 10 years, paint on metal could need to be maintained, or especially if it's over 10 years. And then also I kind of had some questions around how could it be possible to include a mural or art on on a container, because that wouldn't be matching the building, but I could see where that could actually be an improvement, and especially, you know, within the neighborhoods or the alleys. You know, would that be something that could be possible with staff approval, or how might that be worked in if council, you know, is supportive?
Sure. If council is supportive, definitely we could add in language that they're required to maintain the paint on the storage container for the duration of the container being on the site. I think that a mural or some sort of art on the container certainly could be a possibility. We may be able to even determine that that's complementary to the existing building and allow it that way. But we can take a look at that certainly.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions about this? Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing. Oh wait, Councilmember Burgell and then Councilmember Moulton.
So when we're talking about, you know, maintaining the paint and those types of things, is there a maintenance plan or restrictions on this except for the first painting? Because I agree with Leslie, we don't, you know, there's got to be some maintenance involved. You can't just have peeling paint or, you know, junky.
If council includes in their motion this evening to add that language, we can certainly do that before it comes back to you for adoption.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Moulton.
I just wanted to say you could turn off the map now if you wanted to go to speakers instead. Thank you. Actually, then I guess I do have a question. Is there anything that requires that people's buildings be painted nicely or maintained in a way that's aesthetic?
There actually is not. We are treating shipping containers slightly differently than we would, you know, a stick-built building if somebody wanted to put that in the back of their property for storage. So I think it's probably the connotation that Connex boxes sometimes have. And sometimes they arrive in various interesting colors. So I think that's kind of where that idea came from.
So it's a slightly higher standard, but more it's just try and make it look like a building instead of a rail car that somebody dropped there.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any. And now I will open up the public hearing for public comment.
Mayor Seaman, I did not have anyone request to speak on this item. I don't know if anyone's joined us that would like to speak, but I'm not seeing anyone with their hand raised.
I'm assuming Mr. Kraft is here just to answer questions.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, then I will bring it back for comments or a motion. Councilmember Castellano.
Well, I would like to include some sort of language around maintenance of the boxes, just because they are something that, you know, I think, yeah, just, you know, I think it is important to keep them looking nice, you know, just because of the nature of the item themselves. And I guess I would be curious to hear from other council members about the idea of art or murals and maybe something around, you know, staff approval of that. But I'm supportive of that idea.
Councilmember Burgell.
I like the idea of creating an opportunity for murals. And I also agree that we need to have some sort of maintenance on these things. That's the problem. Sometimes I think we come up with these great ideas and then they're not maintained. And pretty soon it's just, you know, one more thing to look at and wish that we had made different plans. So I'm a big fan of creating a maintenance plan and whether that art goes through, whether the mural goes through design review or the art count, the arts and culture committee, whoever that needs to happen with. But I think that's a great idea. I support that.
So I have a question about, and I agree, these are temporary fixtures generally, and we're allowing them to be permanent. So creating that maintenance is sort of what takes it from a temporary object to a permanent one in my mind. But do we have to get permission for what different businesses put on their murals when they paint it? I mean, I don't know if this should be a higher threshold. If we could just say, and complimentary painting, including murals. Councilmember Moulton, I really don't know.
I can answer that question. As a muralist, there's design review reviews the content or the themes of murals in certain areas of the city. And some design review boards take that that charge to mean different things, but essentially, yes, they do it in Old Town and downtown designated areas. They do have to get approved.
So I would not be interested in putting additional burdens than what we normally have on a muralist. That would be my thought. Any other? Councilmember Bauer?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn. I mean, I think the idea of a higher standard for these, structures, that they be painted, that murals are great. I'm just concerned about, I mean, they're not a very attractive item, as far as I'm concerned. I think I see the utility, and I see that, I'm sure people have the need, but, as far as a long-term feature within our city, I'm not that excited about it. But I'm willing to entertain it if we all think it's something that will fit in, and it seems like the public's not that concerned. But yeah, I'm just a little bit hesitant to say, if I were facing the back of a building and 5 containers showed up, and if they're not maintained, the paint starts peeling off, and containers are blue and red and all kinds of different colors. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we put together something that's not going to reduce the aesthetics for people living next to these service commercial areas. That's all.
Councilmember Burgell?
I just have one more. Thank you, Councilmember Bauer. I was just thinking about that and about property size. Are there any regulations for the property size as to how many containers, whether they can even have a container, anything like that principal planner gets? Because if you've got a small business, like say you were over at Myrtle and West and you put 3 containers over there, that's going to overpower that lot. Are there any restrictions? I'm
So I
sorry,
believe-
that was the question.
I believe on the Myrtle and West site, there really isn't a behind the building on that site. So more than likely, they're going to have to come for a minor use permit because they won't meet the requirements that are in the code. And we would have the opportunity at that point in time to look at what they were proposing and make a decision as to whether or not it was appropriate. Let's see, there is no minimum floor area in the SC zone district, but there is a maximum of 2.5. So they would be limited by the floor area that's allowed, and the Connex box would count towards their floor area.
I guess my concern is, for instance, Papa and Barkley, that property is big. So like if they were to put something behind that building, it probably wouldn't be problematic. But as Councilmember Castellano was speaking to, some of these areas, like right, in the residential areas, if there's just not that space, I have concerns about the aesthetics of it all. that's why I'm curious if there's any regulation as far as how many or that type of situation.
We're not proposing anything, but if council would like, we could certainly add something.
I'd be interested in that, actually. I don't know if anybody else supports that, but I don't want to have alleys filled with Connex boxes and I don't, that type of situation. I'd be interested in that.
What would you propose, Kim, for your?
Well, I think that there should be some kind of restrictions on land size, like how much space is on the property as opposed to the box. I don't know, aesthetically, it just seems like if you're crunching all this stuff in there, I'm not exactly sure. I just know that I don't want to drive through alleys or downtown and look through the alley and see, 5 boxes in the alley, or I don't want to drive down by where like Speedy Taco is and see, a Connex box up against the fence there, or, those kinds of things, because they're not attractive. And I too understand, like on bigger properties, that makes sense to me, but on these smaller properties, I'm not sure that I would support that. So I don't know, maybe I'm just, putting it out there as far as I don't have a solution, Kristen, but I would like to see us look at it further, perhaps.
Councilmember,
I have support.
Councilmember Moulton.
I agree, looking at a limitation on like number of boxes based on the square footage of the lot or something like that, so we don't open the floodgates to overcrowding the lots. Is there something like that for other storage buildings? Is there something already in the code around storage buildings that would prevent them from putting a bunch of boxes in?
There is not. They would just be limited by the floor area ratio, as I mentioned before.
Okay.
I'm curious with the floor area ratio, because those boxes are pretty large. I mean, does that automatically rule out, a quarter of the business of the properties, or hardly any of the properties? If they add, say, 2.
If they added two and
So like if you imagine the floor space of 2 Connex boxes, how many of those businesses that are in the zone would be eliminated immediately?
purely guessing, maybe a third.
For me, that just sort of helps me visualize the space that people have and how big they are.
And please, that's a quick off the top of my head. So
Yeah.
Could be a different number.
Councilmember Castellano.
Is the, I know this was kind of brought forward because of the request of an applicant. Is there a kind of time frame for that applicant in terms of, I would rather spend a little more time considering some of these issues we're bringing up, if possible, especially in terms of numbers of Connex boxes on a lot and things like that.
So I'm happy to address that. We are not in a hurry on this. We foresee outgrowing the Broadway facility. That could happen in the next year if some things happen at the state level with hemp that allows us to bring our production of our national product line that is not THC bearing to Eureka. So that's kind of a big thing that we're preparing for, and that would be the fastest. So as far as we're concerned, that you can take the time to get it right. And clearly our situation in the former Kmart building is somewhat different than others. And so, just as a citizen, a space limitation would make some sense to me, and easy for me to say because our lot there is very large.
Thank you for that feedback. All right, that's some new information that could help with this. Anybody have any thoughts now? Councilmember Burgell.
So I would like to see us do some further research, or perhaps not research, but to come up with some parameters for, you know, locations on how many that they can have, and also get some language in there about art and maintenance and those types of things. So I would like to continue this conversation to a later time with more information. I don't know if we have any support for that, but I don't know that I'm ready to vote right now without that new information.
Councilmember Bauer.
I agree with Councilmember Burgell. I think coming back to us with, addressing the issues of aesthetics. I mean, there's containers, I think they range in size from 20 to 40 or 50 feet long. I mean, there's a whole host of things that I think we should consider a little more. And it wouldn't take much time for staff to look at that, propose some amendments, number of, containers. Maybe there's areas of zoning SC that it's just not appropriate, and maybe it should be lot size. So I think we should wait. I'm not ready to vote on this as is.
Councilmember Castellano.
Yes, I support what Councilmember Burgell and Bauer in terms of not voting in, but I want to appreciate Principal Planner Getz for working so hard to do this and bring it forward, and also, for really trying to support, economic development in our community, and I can definitely see the benefit in this. So I do appreciate, and I think it's been a great opportunity to kind of weigh in on it and think about it publicly. So thank you for that.
And also, I appreciate that Papa and Barkley came to us and not in a rush, so that it allows us to have this conversation and it doesn't feel like we're being pushed into a fast decision. So
I do want to point out that not in a rush is not something we do very often.
We'll do it more often because it makes us happy.
We'll do our best.
So it sounds like a majority would like to just have you go back, look at some sizes more, bring us something that's maybe a broader picture than just what would be happening with the Papa and Barkley site. And we can discuss this at another meeting in the near future.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that if there's no action tonight, then we'll have to renotice this for a future meeting.
I figured this was we're kind of going back to the drawing board with this, so. Thank you very much. And I think that's it for that item. So we will move on to our next item, which is, I believe it is our consent calendar. And I have heard that we want to pull item B1, I believe. Is there anything else that we want to pull from the consent calendar? All right, can I get a motion to approve the calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar
Without B1 or?
without B1.
Okay. Second, thank you. Can I get a vote on that, please?
Councilmember Castellano,
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton,
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer,
Aye.
Councilmember Burgell.
Yes.
4 yes votes. Councilmember Arroyo is absent. Motion carries.
All right. So item B1, which is the extension request of disposition and development agreement with Danco Communities for the development of 7th and Myrtle Senior Affordable Housing Project. Councilmember Burgell, I think Kristen Raymond is the one that's going to do a presentation on it. But
Okay, I just wanted, okay. I was the one that wanted it pulled, but we can talk about it later. It's fine.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. Tonight I bring before you the extension request of the deposition and development agreement with Danco Communities. And to ensure that everybody has an idea of what this project is, I did just a short presentation that I'm going to present to you guys this evening. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys all see it? So this is Danco Communities Senior Affordable Housing Project, the deposition and development agreement extension, and this is our 5th request. Background on this project, the City of Eureka released an RFP to develop 2 parcels located on 7th and Myrtle, and 1 parcel located on 6th Street in August of 2017. The City Council selected the Senior Affordable Housing Project by Danco Communities at the December 19th, 2017 council meeting. The project will provide a total of 36 units. That's 35 low-income units and 1 market rate manager unit. And this is a lot. There's the 2 parcels that are on Myrtle. And this is just the overview of it. That's the parcel, the 2 parcels together. And this one is the 3rd parcel that's on the 6th Street. Here's what Danco provided as, or what was approved as their draft of the project. And I have better quality photos of this that I can send you guys in an email for those who would like it. And now I'm going to welcome Chris Starr and Mackenzie, who are with Danco Communities, to give more detail about this deposition request, extension request, and also answer any questions and comments that you guys might have.
Okay, Mr. Dart, I see you first, I think.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, we appreciate the consideration to extend the DDA agreement. We know that this is taking a long time, and that's probably why this has been pulled again. And we apologize for that. We have been, working hard to compete for this highly competitive funding that funds these type of projects. When we started out, we knew that it was going to be competitive. Senior housing happens to be the most competitive out of the 3 types of housing that state is funding. Permanent supportive housing projects like the one that you see rebuilt on Broadway or 5th Street in Eureka there, the veteran project, that gets priority. Then large family projects are our 2nd priority, and the seniors, unfortunately, are 3rd. About 2 projects in all of California in the rural areas are funded, senior housing funded per year, per round, The last round, which was the 4th time we applied, we are we still have a pending application, by the way. We came in 3rd out of all the state. And again, they're only going to fund 2 projects. So we are right at the cutoff. We're at 50, it all boils down to basically a tiebreaker. And our score is 52.77. And the next remaining score is like 53. So we're right on the cutoff. We want this project funded as much as anyone. We're not in the business of continuing to apply over and over again. We want to get this project under construction. We have come up with an alternative strategy. We've been working with city manager on it, Miles Flattery, on this, and we've been having conversations about a way to make our project more competitive. And with that, our next application, we're anticipating a 61% tiebreaker. And if that was the application that we submitted in the last round, then it would have for sure been a win. It would have been the number one in the state. So we're almost there. I know that it sounds like a broken record, and I've said that to you before, but we're still fighting to get this funded, and we would appreciate another extension to allow us at least one more round to take another run at it. We do have. I will remind the council that we do have already some funding committed from the state. We're successful with a $1.6 million infill infrastructure grant to do some of the utility connections, to help cover some of the permitting fees, the engineering, the sidewalk reconfiguration, and those type of improvements. So we do have that as a state commitment, but it's not enough. And by our tweaks to the DDA that we're going to make and our next application, we should have a win. So that's all I got. Any questions I can answer?
Any questions? Councilmember Castellano?
It's this question is a little bit about my frustration with the degree of competitiveness of this funding. You know, I mean, I don't know. I guess my opinion is that it's just ridiculous that they've made it so competitive when we all need this housing so badly. But, you know, have you seen any changes coming up that may kind of allow more projects to be funded rather than just 2 per year?
Yeah, well, there's more money coming through the system this next round, because there's a lot of initiatives at the federal level and the state level for more affordable housing. So there's billions of dollars that it's going to circulate through the system, which should free up projects. The unfortunate part is every community in the state needs housing. We're in a housing crisis, and there's only enough dollars to go around to fund about not even a third of the projects that put applications out there. And the priorities are homelessness. The governor's priorities have been homelessness, and then large family housing. Seniors need housing just as much as anyone, and I hear you. It's frustrating for us as well, but that is where the policymakers have put their emphasis on, is the ending homelessness and large family housing. That doesn't mean to say that you can't get a senior housing project funded. I mean, we did the Eureka Lodge years ago. We were able to pull that one off with funding through the same type of funding. But the environment changes around, the priorities change depending on the administration, and now large part, at least half of the pool goes to permanent supportive housing, and then the seniors are getting the scraps, unfortunately. But to your question, this next round and over the next few years, there's going to be more money in the system than we've ever seen in my career doing this. And so it's going to free up a lot more projects, and I'm confident this one's going to get to the finish line.
All right. Any other questions? Councilman Burgell, did you have questions, or did you want to wait for comments?
I'm just curious, just in listening to what you were talking about, because we do need the housing. Do you think if we change tack on this project and put a different population in the housing, we'd be better to get the funding we need to move forward? I mean, currently,
for sure.
It's been 2017, so it's been what, 4 years that we've been working on this, or that you've been working on this, which I appreciate. And I appreciate that we need the senior housing, but right now, like you said, we are in a housing crunch. And I'm wondering if we might need to look at this from a different angle, whether we find a different location for senior housing, or whether we change tack and do something with the population that's going to be housed there, something to make it more attractive to get the money to have this property built. I don't know if you have any ideas on that. And then secondly, I was curious, how long did it take to get the funding for the lodge? Was it similar timeline, or?
Yeah, so let me, I'll answer that one first and then go back to your other question. I don't recall the lodge. I think it took a few rounds. I honestly, I don't remember, but many of our projects do take several rounds. I know that some of the projects that we did in Fortuna, Yarrow Village is one, a senior housing project. We applied for 6 years and finally got it funded. We just got a project funded in Fort Bragg that we're under construction on. That was also a 6.5 year project. We just got a project funded in Bakersfield that we applied for 15 times. We just got it funded. So it's not uncommon to continue to have to pursue it. To your other question, there's no question if we were providing housing for homeless folks or large family, it would have already been funded. It would have already been built. When we responded to the RFP, that was part of my presentation, is that, there's options here. We could do permanent supportive housing, large family, or senior housing. And I do believe I fully disclosed that the senior housing was the least competitive amount. But at the time, that's what the housing committee and the council wanted to see there for good reason. I understand. I mean, there's certain locations are appropriate for certain types of housing. And I do think that senior housing in that location is a good option. But to your point, if we did change housing type, it would have already been built. People would be moving in. But that's not the route we went. I do think if we are going to do that, I would encourage, again, our strategy is solid. We've been working with the city manager and we do have a winning score going in the next round. And with the additional resources coming through the system, our chances are better than they ever have. And if we could just apply at least one more time for the senior housing before exploring other options, I think that's probably the fastest path to get this project done.
Okay, so I guess because last time that we did this extension, the thought was at that time that would be the last time. And so I'm just hopeful that if there is a next time after, this application, that, this doesn't go on for 15 years. We have parking lots that we're going to be changing over. We've got a lot of need, as do many communities, and I'd like to see things moving forward more quickly if we can. So I would say I hear what you're saying about applying one more time. I have concerns.
Yeah, one other point I wanted to make. One of the changes that the state made, which affected every community, is they basically designated these census tracts within every community, every city, every county within the state, where they prioritize housing, and they're called high and highest resource areas, which this property is not in. In fact, there's not many properties in the city of Eureka, including all the different properties that are listed come in the future RFPs that get that priority. So I just bring it up in that's one of the changes that's happened throughout this time frame, that there's these census tracts that were adopted by HUD that basically designate certain areas, geographic areas, where they want to see housing that has higher resources, so that the low income folks are mixing with the higher income folks, and the better schools and more opportunities for jobs, et cetera. And whether or not it makes any sense or not is a whole nother argument, because when you look at the maps, you'll find that they're all over the board, and you can make an argument that why did you designate that area? But that's part of the situation that should be included when thinking about future development in certain locations, as these census tracts get priority. And not to say that there aren't any in the city of Eureka, because there are, but there are not many, and it would be worthwhile to keep that in perspective as thinking about future housing in the state's priorities.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Do we have any comments from the public?
Kristen has her hand up.
Oh, Kristen.
I do want to say, if this round is approved, it will allow Danco to apply for 2 different So they'll apply in July and then they'll be able to apply again in December. Is that right, Mackenzie?
It would actually be February, July and February.
Okay. Texas, I mean, Councilmember Moulton, did you have your hand up?
I did not.
Okay, just glanced out of my eye. It looked like you did. All right, anybody from the public have anything to say?
I did not get a request from anyone to speak on this item.
All right, I will bring it back for a motion, but before I do, I want to say that I've been doing quite a bit of talking to folks about senior housing and the scope of housing, our whole housing issue. And I don't know why the governor's not prioritizing it, because he does have a master plan for aging, and the #1 goal in there is housing for all ages. But housing for seniors trickles down in a lot of different ways. It allows people to downsize that are living in homes that are far too big for them now, that don't have anywhere to go. It allows people to get out of skilled nursing facilities that don't need to be there, which is a really strange political thing. But there are a lot of folks who are currently living in skilled nursing facilities that just can't get places to live. So I hope we do continue to focus on providing for all kinds of housing, including senior housing, and kind of bulldogging that one a little bit, because it is so very important to me. And I think to the community as well. So that is my opinion about it. But do we have any motion or any other comments? Councilmember Bauer?
No, I want to thank Chris and Mackenzie for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm all in favor of giving this another shot. You know, I think senior housing is something that we don't do enough of. And with that, I'll make the motion to authorize the city manager to extend the disposition and development agreement with Danco Communities for an additional 12 months, effective June 1st, 2021, to expire on June 29th, 2022.
I'll second.
All right, you have a comment as well, I saw.
And I do just want to say that I do agree that, and I definitely support these, applying for these next 2 rounds. But, I think if it comes next summer and we're still struggling, it would be worth taking a look at changing tack.
All right. More discussion, Councilmember Brigel.
Yeah, I'm willing to support this last application, but I think that if it doesn't come to fruition, that it will be time to really reevaluate that site and maybe find a different site or something else to do. But certainly, property and housing is something that we don't have a lot of, and we need the housing and we don't have a lot of the property. And so I don't want to have this tied up for 15 rounds. So I do support what you're doing now, though, and we'll see what happens in July.
All right, any other discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
Councilmember Brigel?
Yes.
4 yes votes. Councilmember Arroyo absent. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Go get that money.
Good luck.
We will move on to item C1 under ordinances and resolutions. This is road maintenance and rehabilitation account for the fiscal year 2021-22, and I do believe that will be Director Gerbing. Looks like he's on the beach.
That's right. A very cold day at the beach. Yeah. All right. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mayor and Council. The item that's before you tonight is the annual resolution regarding the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017 that road maintenance and rehabilitation account that was established by Senate Bill 1 is a pot of funding that, when it was enacted back in 2017, was a huge thing for the city. It greatly increased our funding for street maintenance and vastly changed the amount of paving we were able to do on an annual basis. Fast forward to 2020, when Measure H was enacted by voters, and that funding picture has changed even more. But we did want to bring before you the resolution tonight that basically is a requirement of Senate Bill 1. And in that resolution, we have to outline the fact that we are going to be spending this RMRA money on certain streets. We're not obligated to stick with those streets if the funding picture changes or emergency projects arise. We could end up paving different streets. But in this case, what staff has designated in the list is E Street from Harris to the South City limits and Washington Street from Broadway to Waterfront Drive. What I can do is pull up a map of the 5-year paving plan that includes those two streets. Those are two of them that are colored in orange here. The paving that's active this year is in red. And then in addition to Washington and E Streets next year, we're looking at paving Union, Glen, Central, Spring, part of Summer, and then Commercial Street. Some of that we may actually be able to pull forward into this year, depending upon how the projects go that are currently active. If we have enough left in contingency, we might pull some of those forward. But we have to be really careful about that, because one of the critical pieces in planning the street maintenance is looking at what the underlying utilities are like. Just like we don't want PG&E coming in and cutting up our new streets to repair gas lines or replace them, we also don't want to have a sewer line continue to cause problems in a newly paved street, or pave over a water line that we know has problems. So trying to do some very thoughtful planning. This shows the 5-year plan, including, like I said, this year's streets in red, next year's in orange. The sort of dark yellow is 2023, lime green is 2024, and then the darker sort of Kelly green is 2025. Some of those, particularly in the out years, are subject to change, and what's on this map doesn't include what will likely be some pretty extensive residential area projects. We haven't shown those on this map just for clarity's sake, but we do know that they will happen. So with that, you have staff's recommendation in front of you to adopt the resolution outlining the plan for next year's paving with the RMRA, and I'm available for any questions.
Councilmember Burgell.
So you said that it's not, we don't have to do Washington and that. So I just like to advocate for the area over near Target. No, you know, I mean, those people.
That was an X.
X Street. I thought you were doing this, whatever, you know, but that neighborhood has been suffering for a very long time. In fact, in the city of Eureka, I believe that area, even over Q Street, that whole region probably has the worst roads in the city. And they've been put off for a very, very long time. And I realize a lot of that has to do with how much it costs. But we do have, you know, several businesses over there that have been really putting up with things. I do appreciate you filling the potholes. But unfortunately, that's really not going to do it when you've got, you know, Pepsi trucks driving through, you've got truck traffic, taking things to Target, those kinds of things. And again, it's just been so long. And I know that we've talked about trying to get it moved forward to next year, but I'm curious if this funding might be able to be used for some of our worst streets in the city.
Really what allows us even more than RMRA funding to get at some of those worst streets is Measure H money. That funding, which ups our overall street maintenance budget to in the ballpark of, you know, $3 million, it's a little bit less than that, but it's just a huge difference from what we've had before. And in years past, before Senate Bill 1, we would have said it would take our entire street maintenance budget to repave one block of something in the condition of X Street or 2nd Street. And we will be able to get at streets like that. We do have it on this map scheduled for 2024, but in discussions since the map's been developed, staff's looking at trying to get that done next year. This year really isn't an option, but next year probably is. But underlying utilities are a big part of that. And honestly, some of what we're learning from our paving this year, there are a few streets that we've rehabbed in a different way than we really ever have before, including Hawthorne, Felt, and Clark Street. All of those were ground completely through. We mixed all of that base in, basically recompacted, regraded the street to provide a better crown or a better sort of, a crown in the street to let it drain better. And then we paved over the top of it. And so we create a more positive drainage situation. We create a better section to accommodate that traffic and the heavy vehicles on it. So I think that we've seen success with that this year, and it will take from that some new knowledge and be able to put it into next year's projects. So all of that is a very long way of saying, yes, I understand. We also want to do the second next area, and we're looking at moving it forward.
So with that, can you do it in phases? So is there a way to grind the street down to like just gravel or something that's better than, driving your car through ditches as you drive across the road? And then doing, which this is true, I'm not exaggerating, and then maybe finish the other portion the following year?
Well, not really. Unfortunately, because of the way that equipment gets mobilized, that's not really the best option. If you haven't been down to 2nd Street in, say, the past 2 weeks, I would go down there again, because the work that was done is more than patching of potholes. It's probably the most ambitious sort of thin overlay and patching combination that our staff has taken on their own. And I think they did a pretty good job given the limited amount of equipment that they have compared to what contractors can bring in. But the problem with trying to grind something out ahead of time is that you have to bring in the grinder, the grader, compaction machinery, all of that. And the only thing that you're not bringing in is the paving machine. So you're doing all of that work. You will have to redo a lot of it the following year if you come back and pave, because it will degrade over time. Gravel roads just won't hold up. I mean, the pavement, I understand, is in poor condition, but it's better to do it all in one fell swoop. It's much more cost effective, and it will result in a better end product.
Okay, I have heard good things from the neighbors. They really appreciate what you've done so far. I just really feel like it's important to advocate for these worst streets in town that seem to get neglected all the time. So, or often, not all the time. Thank you.
Councilmember Castellano, then Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you, and thanks, Director Gerving. We received input from a citizen and the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities about the possibility of using this funding for complete streets. Could you possibly say a little bit more about kind of our planning around complete streets, and also, I know we've talked about in the past, like bicycle boulevards and things like that, just where we're at with those kinds of planning, and or like how, sorry, it's a two-part question, and or how potentially Washington, I know it ties kind of into the Bay Trail there, could become a complete street or something like that, or if that would make sense.
I don't know that we've looked at Washington in that regard. That's an interesting idea. A short street like that to provide that kind of connection may or may not be a good alternative. It certainly would be simple because it's not a very long street, not very many intersections, so you don't have a lot of those complicating factors like something like the C Street Bike Boulevard does. But we have done a lot of planning around complete streets. If you look at the city's grant applications, whether it's for ATP or for HSIP, I think that those will reflect the level of planning that's gone into complete streets in one form or another. Also, the recent Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Grant application that was put in would include an M Street Bike Boulevard and a lot of other improvements on other surrounding streets. So I think we are working on that. Using RMRA funding for that, I think gets a little bit, it's probably not the most straightforward way to use that funding. Going forward, will we have more flexibility because of the increased budget for Measure H to include other complete streets elements in our paving projects? Yeah, I think we will. And that's something we haven't had the luxury of doing in the past, but going forward, I think we'll have a better chance of doing that.
Councilmember Moulton? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, actually, I was just wondering where a member of the public might be able to find that map.
Well, I sent an email just before the council meeting to our staff because I know where it's located on the website, and it's on the street paving page. But if you search for street paving on the city's website, you don't find that page. So if you go to the homepage and then departments, public works, and then engineering, and then you click on street paving, you'll find that map. There's a lot of other good information there about street paving, how we prioritize it, what is pavement condition index, all of those kinds of things. There's a wealth of information there, and we're going to try and make it show up a little bit better. But in the meantime, I can get that link out to council so that all of you can see it.
Thank you. I think that answers about 5 out of 10 of the questions I get on a daily basis. So.
All right, and Councilmember Bauer.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I think you answered my question, Brian, about, well, pavement condition index. I mean, I think the question we all get is, why not my road? Or why not X in second, you know? And so I think the public just wants to know that Washington and E streets have a really poor pavement condition index. Hence, we're doing those, you know, that they're scheduled before second. So I think that's just the thing that we need to really let our community know. This is, and I think people don't know that Washington probably gets a ton of truck traffic. And realistically, I don't think that's a good location for pedestrians, just because it's most industrial use goes down Washington. So, you know, the street gets beat up. We don't want the public really, you know, pedestrians really using it, because it's a busy street, you know. But yeah, so I think that's just an important part of this, is to let people know, you know, Washington's a heavy use street, E is a heavy use street. They are beat up, but we are working on X and second and all those areas by Target that Councilmember Burgell is talking about, because they are pretty rough. So, but I think it's great to know that we can also move the funds if we need to, you know. So happy it's happening.
All right. Any other questions? Is a question? Okay. Okay, we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back for comments. Is there anybody in the public who wants to speak on this issue? I don't see any hands. All right, seeing none, I will bring it back and we'll go directly to Councilmember Burgell.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, when we're talking about the pavement index, when you talk to people over on Second and X, you know, that pavement index far exceeds, I'm sure, the pavement index on West Washington and some of those other areas. So, you know, I'm just going to keep pushing for that. I just feel like they have really, you know, they've really tolerated a lot over there with their businesses. And especially with Target over there, there's a lot, you know, they don't have the volume perhaps that Washington and E Street have, but they do have some of our local businesses that, you know, the customers were complaining, you know, driving over these. I mean, now you're right. Now that you've fixed it, it's a lot better. But when you've got to use your 4x4 to go on a road in a city, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. And especially since it's right at the trailhead also. So That's my comment. I'm just going to keep advocating for them because I feel like they've just been stellar at trying to be, patient about it. So.
All right. Does anybody have a motion on this? Thank you, Councilmember Power.
I motion to adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Eureka designating projects to be funded by the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account during fiscal year 2021-22.
All right. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Moulton. Can we get a roll call? Do we have discussion? It looks like Councilmember Castellano.
Thank you. I mean, generally, and I realize this just is also kind of a necessary process of the RMRA funding. But so with that in mind, I do think there's some space, of course, for really looking at things. I was looking at West Washington on the map, and though I agree with Councilmember Bauer that it is a street used by lots of trucks, it's also where mental health services is located, and a lot of the county facilities that are used a lot by pedestrians, actually. So I do think it would be worth looking at what it might be to do a complete street there, or how much extra it would cost, or just kind of, I don't know, considering it. And this is something, Director Gerving, I'll follow up with you. I would definitely like to I'm going to take it upon myself to better understand the future of the bicycle boulevards and things that are coming up. But I think just looking at, again, like, how can we continue to expand? I'm definitely supportive of continuing to expand how the trails we have kind of intersect with thoroughfares that are used by different people. And Councilmember Burgell, I definitely support you continuing to advocate for the second over there, but yeah. So, and I think if that can happen, if Second Street can happen next year, that would be great.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? All right, I think we're ready for a vote.
Councilmember Castellano,
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton,
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer,
Aye.
Councilmember Burgell,
Yes, and I do hope that you will consider the conversation this evening, Director Gerving.
4 yes votes, Councilmember Arroyo absent, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now we are going to move on to item D1, and we will invite Director Millar to come and talk to us about the fiscal 21-22 proposed budget introduction.
Right. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, you sound good.
Okay. Right, so my item tonight is to introduce the fiscal year 21-22 budget. I will be sharing my screen. So for the 21-22 budget process, tonight, June 1st, is the budget introduction. So it is now on the city's webpage, and later on in the presentation, I will show everybody how to find the two budget documents. Next week, I believe on Tuesday, June 8th, will be our budget study session. This is where I will go into depth about what the 21-22 budget encompasses and the changes from this year's budget. And then on Tuesday, June 15th, the second council meeting of June, hopefully we'll have a budget to adopt. So for next meeting or the study session, we are going to look at personnel. There are a lot of changes. Those changes have to do with department requests, as well as the strategic visioning and how we are spending our Measure H dollars. We'll also look at the personnel distributions that have changed between departments and funds. By going over the personnel changes, which are the main costs or main expenditures we have, we'll have a better understanding of what's going on in the funds. I will follow up with the major fund analysis. This includes the general fund, the numerous enterprise funds, and our internal service funds. So how do you find the budget? You simply go to the city's webpage. The address is at the top. You should see something like this. Click on the header labeled departments. Then you will find finance down in the middle. And then the drop-down list under finance, you go to financial reports. And up at the very top of the page, you should see the two items. You have the proposed budget, which is the user-friendly version of the budget. And then you have the proposed line item budget, which is what the departments use on a weekly basis. That is all I have for tonight. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Director Millar? Councilmember Castellano.
Would it be possible for me to get a printed version of that so I can do my sticky note highlighter note-taking process with it?
Sure, I'll have one printed tomorrow and delivered to the city manager.
Okay,
Would
sorry.
anyone else like a, it's okay. Would anyone else like a physical copy?
I actually like a physical copy.
Okay, so 3.
Okay, Councilmember Burgell.
Just not the line items. I don't want the line items.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Director Millar? I mean, there wasn't a lot of meat to ask questions about, so, but we'll get you next week for sure.
Yeah.
Did we have any public comment on this item? I don't expect it. I don't see it. All right, I will bring it back. We are just receiving the report and providing direction on the budget. So we will be looking forward to next week. Does anybody have anything besides that they want copies that we want Director Millar to think about before next week when we see him? We also all have his email, right? So when we think of things in the middle of the night, we'll send them to him. Right on. All right. Well, you got through that one easy. We'll see you next week. Next up, we have our city managers reports, and in there we're going to have a couple other reports, but I will send it over to City Manager Slattery.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just have a brief little update that I want to give about the Skywalk opening, and then we'll get to the public safety reports tonight. Chief Robertson as well as Chief Watson are going to be providing updates. The annual update will come from EPD, and then just a update. Oh, Sean, there's Sean. Sorry, he turned on his video. Hi, Chief Robertson. Anyway, my update is going to be on the Skywalk. We had originally planned on doing a fundraiser for the second phase of the Sequoia Park playground upgrades. And we received a lot of concerns about the size of the event and where we're at with COVID right now. And so I just wanted to notice publicly that we are going to be postponing that fundraiser event and do it sometime later in the summer. So keep your eyes out for that. But the June 5th Saturday evening event that was scheduled for the zoo was being postponed. So with that, we will go to Chief Robertson, I believe was the first one on the agenda, and he's going to provide an update for Humboldt Bay Fire.
All right, thank you, Manager Slattery. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my screen. right, so I'm just going to provide a brief quarterly report tonight, just to kind of give everyone an update on what's been going on with Humboldt Bay Fire. That will encompass this presentation on calls for service, what our CERT team has been up to, some new members to our family, and then some new accomplishments, improvements, projects, and funding, an update on our fallen firefighter memorial, and update on our volunteer dive team. So here's a brief graph for you detailing our response numbers so far this year. We're trending to more or less where we've been the last 3 years. Last year was an anomaly, of course, as everything else with COVID. So in our second quarter last year, we saw a 20% drop. That was ascribed directly to COVID and the lockdown. This year, we're seeing trending to more normal the previous years, where the second quarter is more or less where the first quarter was. And our projections for the year is around 6,500 calls, so more or less where we've been the last 2 years. Here's a basic graph outlining our individual station responses. In order of the most busy stations, we have stations 1, 3, and 4. Those are the 3 city stations, followed by station 5 and station 2 in the fire district. And here's a pie chart outlining our basic incident types. Again, the trends are pretty normal for the last 3 or so years, with the majority of our calls 60%, which is actually 20% lower than the national average at 60%. Excuse me, ours is 60, the national average is around 80%. Fires are pretty standard, where we usually have them around 4%, followed by good intent, service, and false alarm calls. I'm going to pause to see if anyone has any questions on the response numbers before I move on. Great. Just an update on the COVID-19 effect. We're still responding within the COVID pandemic, as you know. We've had 53 confirmed COVID-related calls this year, and about 1,300 where COVID-19 was a possibility. Those are both generated through our incident reports, where our personnel are asked to click on a particular box so that we can track that. Almost all of our personnel are now fully vaccinated, and our expanded PPE and response protocols for COVID are still in place and will probably be in place for the next year, if not longer. That may be a significant long-term change that will be implemented as normal, and we won't really go back to where we were before. Our paramedics and EMTs have been able to administer vaccinations at the various county clinics. That started in January, and we're continuing to do that. That has been reimbursed through the FEMA funds, and we're hoping that can continue because it's been a really great community service. So as you may recall, our CERT team, Community Emergency Response Team, transferred from the city of Eureka to Humboldt Bay Fire in the last year. We currently have 14 members, and they've been incredibly prolific and valuable in the community in the last year, providing over 1,700 volunteer hours. Most of that was assisting the Humboldt County OES and EOC with medical and PPE delivery to various agencies, including ourselves and EPD and other city departments. They assisted with the alternative care site set up at Redwood Acres, as well as some volunteers scheduling and logistics. And then they also participated in I think there were 3 wildfire evacuation centers throughout the county. Those were rather slow to get set up, and the need was pretty significant for shelter, and they were able to provide some supplies to those centers that were set up really quickly. They've also been assisting with the development of other teams, such as the Eureka High Teen CERT team and the Ferndale team, donating equipment and materials. and they applied for and received a grant for $288,000 this year and are waiting to receive those, primarily materials and equipment again, such as trailers and training for 37 members. They've just been a tremendous asset to the community as well as to Humboldt Bay Fire, so we're really thankful for all of the efforts. We have a lot of changes in the last few months with Humboldt Bay Fire. We have 3 new firefighters. We have a new administrative assistant who is replacing our current admin assistant, Ashley Benalicia, who's leaving for nursing school in the fall. So Casey Tonkin will be starting on June 14th, along with Kamante Cook, who will be our part-time fire inspector. We had several new board members, as you know, some of them. Marcia Butler-Smith is a new district board member and appointed to the JPA. Councilmember Bauer is a new JPA board member, along with Councilmember Burgell on the city side. And Gina Herbst was very recently appointed to the fire district, and she enjoyed the station tours I was able to give her a couple of weeks ago. So again, just thankful to have a really supportive and engaged board that helps us move forward. A lot of training and development within our organization. We've had 3 paramedics be qualified, 2 of whom are our brand new hires, James Sakis, Scott Gordonio, along with Griffin Barnes. One of our hires from last year, Matt Parsons, also qualified as a paramedic. We had 3 of our firefighters pass the test to join our water rescue team. 1 firefighter passed our engineer's test and is now on the list to get promoted within the next year. And one of our captains completed the training to become a licensed fire investigator to continue building out that program. So a lot of growth and development in our specialty programs, which is a really important part of the service that we deliver to the community. We continue to work on improving our facilities. Our training drill grounds down on Hillficker Lane, the Chris Camp Training Center, recently got painted. Since it was built in 2007, it has not received any maintenance on the paint. So this has been a real great thing, along with the paving and fence project, primarily funded through Measure Z, through the Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association. It just is a real great improvement for that site. And this is a site used not only by fire agencies throughout the county, but a lot of other public safety agencies, such as the sheriff and police departments. So a great, exciting thing. We have a couple of really exciting new projects going on through a grant we're received through the Rural EMS grant last year. We've initiated a feasibility study with St. Joe's about community paramedicine, and that's ongoing. We hope to continue working with them to come up with a concept that we can implement. Our equity committee started meeting in January based on an assessment we did. And this committee is also working in parallel with the work that Fog Break's doing through the city of Eureka, and we've been able to participate in that. But some real concrete things we've done is develop an equity statement and plan that focuses on training, policy review with recruitment development, and that comes down to increasing our outreach and creating an internship and development program. And what's exciting for me is that we're not just talking about these things, we're doing them, and we have an engaged staff that's really committed to it. And it's also very aligned with the goals of the city, all the way down to the internship model, where they've had great success with HSU. And that's something that can really benefit our organization and in turn benefit the community. So we're excited to continue that work. We've been pretty successful in accomplishing grant funding in the last year, specifically through our community risk reduction specialist, Amy Conlon. We've received $378,000 in grant funding for many different programs. And we've submitted for an additional $415,000 recently, and we hope to be awarded those grants too, providing a wide variety of benefits to the JPA and then to the community, all the way down to a small $600 grant for pet oxygen masks, which may seem like a small thing, but you'd be surprised at how many structure fires we attend to where we find pets that we can resuscitate. And these kits will help improve their survivability. So it can be a real benefit to a family who's in that situation. Our fallen firefighter memorial is closer than it's ever been. Our fundraising efforts continue through a lot of support in the community. Work is underway. That groundwork actually started today down at Clark Plaza where some stone scraping occurred. The casting is at Station 1. If you'd like to see it, it's a truly remarkable piece of art. And our dedication is scheduled for June 12th. Everyone is invited. And we will be having a ceremony honoring the sacrifices made by the 6 firefighters lost in the line of duty in the 150 plus years of history of Eureka Fire and Humboldt Bay Fire. So we're very excited about this coming to fruition. And it's just been a tremendous community project in collaboration with the city and specifically with City Manager Slattery just helping us move it forward. So thank you. We have a volunteer dive team. This came out of the need for this through Nick Bruner's tragic passing away last year. He drowned off Trinidad Head. His body was finally recovered by volunteer divers, and the family approached them about starting a team. That effort led to a connection with our water rescue team, specifically Captain Dave Terry, and we began creating a volunteer dive team program. And at this point, a lot of it's been administrative. However, we are looking forward to swearing them in, which is the next step to get them the certifications that they need to fill this role. There are 6 local volunteers with a great depth of experience, and they'll be trained in search, body, and evidence recovery, as well as the documentation around that to be able to provide a regional service that's solely needed in the county. It's going to be funded primarily through private donations and some support from Humboldt Bay Fire. And our goal is to be operational in fall of this year. So you're welcome to join us on June 3rd at 4 p.m. We have a virtual ceremony and then the divers and some family and supporters will be at our Station 1. So in conclusion, at Humboldt Bay Fire, we are committed to community service through leadership, vision, and integrity. The brief overview I provided you tonight really demonstrates in the last year and into this new year how we continue to strive to accomplish that. We've done that through how we've responded to the pandemic by working with our local partners to constantly adapt to the diversity of our community. Starting with the internal issues, we focused on protecting our firefighters to now trying to protect as many of our community as we can through the vaccination clinics. By being prepared for the ever-growing wildfire threat that once again is on the horizon for many of us and came very much too close to comfort last year. We're prepared more than we have ever been before through our staffing models, as well as working with our local public safety partners. And lastly, through our internal and external equity work, where we're dedicated to making our workplace, as well as our community, a more welcoming, inclusive, and beneficial place. All of these things to making our Eureka area a better place. So thank you for your support, and I am ready to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Chief Robertson? Councilmember Castellano, then Moulton.
Thank you. Just real quick, two questions. On June 12th, what time is that fallen firefighter memorial ceremony opening at?
It's at 1 p.m.
1 p.m. Thank you. And then could could you say a little bit more about the community paramedicine work? I remember when, the funding came through, it seems really interesting. I would just be curious to kind of hear like what your hopes are for that, for the community.
Well, there are 12 basic concepts or models in the state. Right now, they're part of a pilot program. Those are set to expire in 2 years. Some of the efforts we have been working on was to develop a particular model. We recently found out that's no longer feasible under the recently changed assembly bill that was passed in December. So that kind of was a bump in the road. We're looking at other models. The problem is that the models are predicated on the assembly bill, which is somewhat political. And so when we move forward to the adoption or the review period for this assembly bill, would like to be reaching out to you as well as other legislators in the area to voice your support of this particular model, because as well as what EPD and other law enforcement agencies are trying to do with alternative transportation and programs, there's a huge amount of benefit that we can provide to the community through these community models that just provide an alternative method of delivery. So while that's a general response to your question, I can't really give any more specifics than that, because that's what we're working on. The delivery model we were hoping to achieve was a paramedic pairing with a public health nurse or a social worker doing post-discharge care that prevents readmits and reduces our call volume. It reduces the cost of the community, and it provides a much higher level of care to people who need it in their homes after they're released from the hospital. So that was one thing we were hoping to accomplish. We're going to continue to work towards that, as well as the other projects or concepts that are out there.
Thank you. Councilmember Moulton, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you, first of all, for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And I'm really glad to see that the work that we're doing on diversity, inclusion is really making it out into actual real world practice. It's easy to talk, a good game, but to see it being implemented really makes me feel good about the direction we're all headed. My question is just a curiosity. You said that some of the protocols around safety that were developed in response to COVID-19, you are going to possibly keep into the future. Could you give me a for instance? I'm just curious.
Sure. So one big thing is we've had to enhance our personal protective equipment. So a very in the grass or in the weeds, so to speak, example is any medical call we go to now, we're wearing an N95 mask, we're wearing eye shields. And so it's as simple as the masking is a new component. Because before it would be based on the nature of call that we received and as described by dispatch. But often when you get there, the nature of the call is different. So the firefighters were being exposed because they were making an assumption on the type of call they were going to. So it's something as simple as that, that N95 mask will just be a standard piece of personal protective equipment for any medical call, regardless of nature. And that's something you see in other public safety agencies where just a day-to-day interaction, not of a medical nature, we're going to be masking. We're probably going to continue that for the foreseeable future until we see specific guidelines from CDPH or CDC.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Burgell.
I just wanted to say thank you. That was a very thorough report, and I just love all the great work you guys are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. I will I will second that. I'm sure we're all really grateful. We love when you come and fill us in on what's been happening. So we'll look forward to seeing you soon at all of these events on June 3rd and the 12th. And keep us informed with all of that. And then I will give it back to City Manager Slattery to introduce the next item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief Robertson, for the report. So now we have Public Information Officer Powell, as well as Chief Watson, to come and provide an annual report on community policing for you guys.
Thank you, City Manager Slattery and Madam Mayor and members of the council and any members of the public who may still be watching tonight. I do want to take a moment to thank Brittany Powell, our crime analyst extraordinaire, who has stayed with us throughout this meeting tonight, just to bring this presentation, which she prepared, to your attention. It's always a tough act following Chief Robertson and the fire department, but we'll do our best. I do want to make a distinction between this annual report, basically 2020 year-end review, which Brittany will be sharing tonight, and our report to the community on 21st century policing, which goes much more so into some of our programmatic things that we've been doing over the last several years, especially as they align with 21st century policing. This is a little bit more data driven tonight. And so with that, I will turn this over to Brittany.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. I think we're all still processing 2020. So just getting this 2020 annual review out there for you guys to see. Let's get my screen ready here. All right, can you all see it? Great. Start with a message from Chief Watson. I will just quote a little section here. This full message and the whole presentation is available on our website at eurekapd.net under the transparency portal. He said, "I believe that the most challenging of years is also one to remember." I thought that was a key point. There's a lot of takeaways and a lot of things that we learned in 2020. Start with communications. The Eureka Police and Fire Communications dispatchers call, take, and dispatch for Eureka Police and Humboldt Bay Fire. They are also trained in emergency medical dispatch, which allows them to provide life-saving instruction over the phone while help is on the way. In 2020, they took over 28,000 911 calls, 87,966 incoming and outgoing non-emergency calls. So they are extremely busy. And for reference, as you all may know, there's usually only 2 dispatchers on at a time. They work 12-hour shifts, 6 to 6, either days or nights. And they take turns call taking and dispatching. Extremely busy. From those calls for service, they created nearly 76,000 total incidents. That's an average of 208 incidents a day. That's for police and fire. 87% of those were police in nature, while 13% of those were fire and medical. For EPD police incidents, they are created either by a call for service from the community or initiated by an officer. Incidents are handled by patrol, various specialty positions such as CSET, POP, our community service officers, and animal control. In 2020, about 11% of all of those incidents resulted in an actual police report being taken, as opposed to just citizen contact or documentation. There were 66,376 total police incidents. Those are handled strictly by Eureka Police. Average of 182 incidents a day handled by our Eureka Police officers and other support staff. Of those, 37% of those were officer initiated. So 21% of those were traffic enforcement, and while the others were responding to patrol checks, business security checks, field interviews with people on the street. So yeah, 63% of all total incidents were called in by our citizens, whereas 37% were proactive officer initiated contacts. Any questions on those? Kind of a lot of numbers taken. Moving on to reports. Of those incidents, 7,219 resulted in a police report being taken. This was down pretty significantly compared to 2019. A lot of changes due to COVID-19 pandemic and the way things operated. 48% of our police reports were misdemeanor in nature, 23% were felony, 5% were collision reports, 5% infraction, and 17% were information only reports. A very notable thing, arrests were down 39% compared to 2019, and this was due to COVID-19 jail booking restrictions that were out of our control. There were 2,463 citations written. It was also down from 2019. 53% of those were traffic in nature. Moving on to the FBI uniform crime reports. These are reports that we have to report to the Department of Justice monthly, and then they compile an annual report. The Part 1 crimes are made up of murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, and vehicle theft. Some of our most concerning type of reports that we take, I listed below. 92 aggravated assaults in 2020. That was a reduction from 2019. We had 171 vehicles stolen in 2020. That was also a reduction from 2019. Though we do have a pretty good recovery rate. We tend to recover a lot of our stolen vehicles, I would say within a day or two of them being stolen, usually somewhere in town. 65 robberies, that is armed robberies and strong arm robberies. That is unchanged from 2019. And 98 residential burglaries. That is the entering into a home, usually while nobody's there during the day, while somebody's on vacation. And that was a 10% reduction from 2019, an average of 8 residential burglaries per month. Moving on to some of our specialty areas at the police department, our records and business office. Their duties seem to keep increasing and increasing with each state bill that passes, requiring more reporting and transparency. We're going from reporting on a UCR Part 1 crime to NIBRs. So a lot of transition going in place that Amanda O'Neill, our records manager, she's really on top of and getting us prepared for those changes. They are responsible for ensuring accuracy and keeping of all police reports. That's all 7,200 from 2020. They make sure they're entered, all the information is correct and reported to the Department of Justice. They are also the business office overseeing live scan services, call taking as well, bike registration, parking enforcement, sex offender registrants, specialty permits, ticket sign-offs, and anything else you could think of, they handle with a pretty small staff. And we welcome 2 new part-time parking enforcement officers in 2020. So that was a good improvement. The Community Safety Engagement Team, CSET, I know you're all aware of. Their mission is to proactively address quality of life, crime, and disorder problems in Old Town along the waterfront and in city parks while developing strategies to ultimately improve upon or eliminate these issues. In 2020, they had 57 substance abuse warm handoffs. That's really helping, building relationships, encouraging people to seek treatment, and really helping those people to the next step. They collected nearly 60,000 pounds of garbage, handled 30% of EPD's mental health incidents, and those were most of the time the more lengthy, serious mental health incidents requiring a lot of cooperation, a lot of support from our supporting agencies. They wrote 91 mental health holds. 2020, they really led the COVID-19 response for our houseless population. Every day they're at free mail, offering resources, education. Officer Swanson was on the loudspeaker every day, providing updates, where to get tested, where to get help. They really did a great job collaborating with all their partners and Uplift. These Measures E partnerships with Uplift provided housing, medical, transportation, and many other resources. And
Can I
halfway into
interject for just 1 second on one of the points you just shared? I think it's important to elaborate on. Going back to where in the slide, it talks about how CSIT handled 30% of EPD's mental health incidents. That trend has only increased this year. And what's really significant about that is this. As originally envisioned, and part of CSET is our Mobile Intervention and Services Team Officer, Ryan Swanson. As you recall, we partnered with the county in an innovative co-responder program where we were putting specially trained officers in the field with licensed mental health clinicians and caseworkers where the severely mentally homeless are at, kind of meeting them where they are versus where we'd like them to be. But it was really focused on the severely mentally ill homeless. That focus still remains, but what's unique about that statistic that you just saw is CSAT has essentially become the department in cities' primary response to people in mental health crisis wherever they are in the city, and whether or not they're homeless. And that's a significant change. Obviously, they have some coverage about 7 days a week, but it's not 24/7, so we're limited. But to take on nearly a third of those 5150 or mental health crisis calls that we receive, in addition to all their other duties, is very significant. And really, it's just a part of the process of identifying a great need and the team stepping up and filling that gap. They receive a great deal of extra training, even beyond what our regular officers do in crisis intervention training, de-escalation. In fact, some of our de-escalation instructors are a member of CSET. And on top of that, Officer Swanson is specially trained in crisis negotiations as well. And so I just wanted to point that out. It's really an expansion. We hope to build upon that in the future.
Thank you, Chief. Moving on to the problem-oriented policing team known as POP. POP addresses long-term nuisance problems and drug activity within Eureka. They're able to focus their attention on long-term investigations and seek long-term solutions, which ultimately reduce calls for service. Some of the more notable things that they accomplished in 2020, they had 136 responses to complaints of problem and or nuisance locations. 5 long-term problem houses shut down or boarded up. I think one of the most notable ones in 2020 was a residence on the 900 block of West Harris Street, I believe next to the Veterans Center and AutoZone. The city received a lot of phone calls about that one. So that one, in conjunction with code enforcement and Humboldt Bay Fire and every department available, was able to get that place boarded up. They seized 6.4 pounds of heroin, 3.89 pounds of methamphetamine, 25 firearms, served 93 search warrants, and made 92 fresh felony arrests. Our criminal investigation section is tasked with all major crime investigations, evidence collection, property and evidence coordination, preparing digital evidence for court, and scene investigations through conviction. They investigated 115 major crimes. Some of the most notable was the murder of Mitch Clark and arrest of Wesley Starrett. They were able to get Starrett in custody extremely fast, and what we believe prevented more heinous acts or murder. Voluntary manslaughter arrest, multiple bank robberies, numerous sexual assault cases, the attempted murder arrest of Tori Mamea, and a July 23rd officer involved shooting. Many of these cases take a lot of time, a lot of resources, and every day they're getting a new case, as well as investigating years old cases that are still in the court pipeline. A lot of follow-up, a lot of standing by for court. They do a really good job, and they are very busy. Other special services, in 2020, we had 2 full-time community service officers. They handled over 1,700 incidents in 2020, which really frees time for sworn officers to handle more demanding or more high crime incidents. We had 1 animal control officer, handled over 1,200 animal-related incidents, and worked tirelessly to update the city's animal ordinance, which I'm sure you've all have heard about. In July 2020, the property room was reduced to one full-time property coordinator, Jeremy, and he has handled all incoming, outgoing property and evidence, as well as a major push to purge old cases based on legal holding requirements. So we're really trying to get our property room upstairs cleaned up to speed, and Jeremy's really doing a great job, and we were able just to hire someone else to help him out. So that's great news. Just some notable things I threw in here for the last page. 2020 was crazy. We moved Coffee with the Captains virtual. We're happy to announce we will be going back live and in person next month. If you want to set your calendars, I believe we're looking at June 29th, 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 at Starbucks on 5th Street. We had many demonstrations over the summer, which started a lot of good conversations, as well as kind of taxed our resources, spent a lot of overtime. But as a department, I think we handled those very well, and we learned a lot. We also held our annual Battle of the Badges blood drive. We brought in 184 donors. I think it was their largest blood drive of the year, and EPD won the trophy for the second year in a row. And if you'd like to mark your calendars again, our next blood drive is the week of July 19th. So mark your calendars and come support Team Eureka Police. That's all I got for you tonight.
Thank you, Brittany. I'd just like to close with one thing. When we talk about POP, for instance, and the work that they're doing with many of those abatement properties, or the CSET team, and the work that they're doing with the homeless and mentally ill, I do think it's important to point out that we very much are part of a larger city team. And so working closely with Uplift Eureka, for instance, which CSET does, really has just increased the effectiveness and the impact of these programs. And they really view themselves as one big team. And then, for instance, with POP, they had countless hours working closely with the city's code enforcement and building departments and other stakeholders to have successful resolutions in those cases. And so, well, tonight we're talking about the great work that I'm sure you appreciate very much, that the men and women in the EPD have done through a very difficult year. That kind of work has been echoed around the city, and these partnerships are so key. And we're very appreciative of the support that we've got from our brother and sister departments in the city. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Councilmember Castellano?
Sorry, I'm such an eager question asker. Just real quick, I mean, it's often the case, but I'm struck, by just the numbers of calls for service and calls to dispatch. Is there an analysis of those calls for service available? 41,622, that's incredible, and I appreciate all of the work in addressing those.
Yeah, that's something I can definitely do. I make a pie chart by call type that is coming in. There are so many call types that sometimes it's just kind of all over the map, but it is something I would be able to do, maybe give the top type of calls. I would say a more common call type is just a generalized suspicious person in a neighborhood, requests for patrol checks. Those are probably some of the more common. Keep the peace is when businesses are asking for assistance with removing unwanted people from their storefronts. But that is definitely something I could get for you.
Do we have anybody else from council? I see you have a public comment, so when we're done, we'll get to you next. Councilmember Burgell.
Well, I just want to share my appreciation for EPD and their proactiveness in the department. I think that CSET is kind of a newer thing to our region and to California. I'm not sure about that, but it certainly is a great model for other communities. I appreciate the compassion that I've seen shown by the officers, and I'm looking forward, Chief Watson, for a ride-along now that you're doing coffee and with the captains in person. We can do ride-alongs now. So that's kind of exciting. And I really appreciate the direction the department is going, and I look forward to more good things in the future. Thanks.
All right, does council have any more? Councilmember Bauer.
Thank you, Chief Watson and Brittany, for the presentation. I want to echo what Councilmember Burgell was saying about CSET. You know, I had a chance to be out with them in the field, and they knew everybody that was camping in a section of Cooper Gulch, and explained their stories, and it all kind of leads back to, I think what Chief talked about there about mental health. You know, it's just so much of the issues that we hear about from the community are related to mental health, and I really hope a focus of the force, you know, EPD and our community is trying to get a handle on it. You know, have the services. I mean, I personally think we need a whole nother unit like Semper Virens. We just don't have enough places to help people, you know, get their heads straight. And I appreciate what the, you know, your guys are doing, what CSET's doing, and Uplift, and, you know, all the great partnerships. But I just want to make sure that we're really focused on mental health and, you know, helping people out, keeping our community safe. And I know you're trying your best, and EPD is, and whatever we can do to make sure that we're really promoting, you know, helping people, you know, get well, to me is, you know, it's really important, and I appreciate the work you guys are doing on that front. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Castellano, I saw you had your hand up again.
Sorry. Yeah, I just forgot to say my appreciation part, you know, just in terms of, yeah, you know, both CSET and POP have had some really great interactions with in the past year, you know, and in particular, I think POP really supported some people in my neighborhood and constituents in addressing some issues that they were having in the neighborhood. And so I just, they appreciate that, you know, the issue was resolved through some really hard work by members of EPD. And so, yeah, thanks to everyone for that. And, you know, definitely also appreciate Councilmember Bauer's perspective on, you know, mental health and those kinds of concerns as well.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from council have a comment or question? If not, I'm going to ask Mr. Cole if he would like to make a public comment. I saw you turn your camera on, so I assume that's what it meant. Are you talking? It's muted.
I can read lips. He's saying that the city manager is incredible, and Chief Watson is too, and he loves each and every member of the council.
Thank you very much, Nick. Let's see, can we hear you now? No. I will say while we're waiting that do you you want to try to get out and come back in? We'll see if he returns. Councilmember Moulton.
While we're waiting, I'll just add my gratitude to the pile for the diverse ecosystem of solutions that are being put forth to all of our really complex problems here. I'm surprised, or I guess I was surprised when I moved to Eureka, what big city problems we can have in such a little city. And I appreciate the diversity of tools that are being brought to bear.
And from the macro to the micro, thank you for getting some traffic statistics pulled for us when we needed them. So it's nice to know that we have those things available to us.
Yes, no problem.
It looks like Nick is coming back in.
I'm wondering if he doesn't have a mic, if maybe he can just chat, add a chat.
We don't have the chat feature
No,
on,
just kidding.
so. Because I was going to say the same thing.
While we're waiting for Nick, this is probably a good time to say that we're very appreciative of the Measure Z support that we have. That is a big part of supporting important programs like CSET and Uplift Eureka. It's just been crucial funding, still very much is. And so a lot of respect and appreciation.
Are you there, Nick? Well, I'm afraid we're gonna probably have to move on. You know how to reach us? Oh, you there?
Did I finally get through?
Yes, you did. Okay.
Yay.
Yay.
And now I don't have to, I can hide in the shadows and just use my voice.
Alrighty.
And I appreciate that. Thank you for allowing me the time to address that, because navigating Zoom from the outside is always challenging every time. And so I had a question for Chief Watson, and it's about Measure Z and CSET and MIST. And I understand at the formation of MIST, there was a DHHS component that operated with that. And I also understand that they didn't apply for funds in this last cycle with Measure Z. And so I'm curious about how that's going to impact the MIST and CSET teams, and how that's going, and what that means for the department. And I was wondering if you could speak towards that a little bit.
If anything, I think that further reinforces how much we need that funding, because it's just going to add more work to the city staff. I think what's more important to note is, yes, DHHS lost their original funding that lasted for several years to support much of their components of the MIST program. But we still work closely with DHH staff every day, their home program and other programs out there on the street with Kelly Johnson and mental health. And so that collaboration and partnership has continued. It looks maybe a little bit different today, but we're still continuing on. And our MIST officer, for instance, is still out there in the field every day, working with the homeless and the mentally ill in the city with that funding, which has been crucial. And so we just adapt, and as realities change. And if anything, we've expanded our relationships with stakeholders. Again, the MIST side, technically from DHHS, that the way that looks has changed, but the need and what we do has not changed.
I appreciate the response, and thank you very much for what you do with that budget.
Yeah, I was just going to add that even just today, I know Officer Swanson, our MIST officer, was riding with a clinician. So they still have that relationship. They still work extremely close together. They have the clinician's phone numbers. They know some of our patients or people that we deal with regularly. They have their clinicians' numbers on hand. They work extremely close with them.
Yeah, I think one of the council members pointed out how they just have noticed how that team knows everybody. And that's so very true. And so DHHS really relies on our CSET and MIST team when they need to engage with their clients, who are out there on the streets and in the green belts. And so the relationship that's been built over the last several years has been really crucial. And again, those funds are being put to great use with both the Uplift and CSET programs.
Thank you very much. And before we move on from the city manager's report, Miles, just want to remind everybody about going back to regular meetings.
So yeah, we're gonna be coming back to council on my next city manager's report on the 15th to describe what that's going to look like. And we are going to be planning on coming back to some sort of hybrid version of public meetings at our first meeting in July. But we'll have more details as to what that's gonna look like. We're still trying to work with the consultant on the audio to make it so that it's ideal, and we're hoping that we can get to that point by July. If not, there'll be some sort of version of hybrid public meeting that'll happen in July. And I do want to thank Crime Analyst Powell. I always called you the PIO, my apologies. And Chief Watson for the information and all the data that they provide. EPD as well as Humboldt Bay Fire do a great service to the city, and it's much appreciated.
Thank you. I'm the PIO too. It's all right.
Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I think we've closing out the city manager report, and we can go into council reports. So I am going to start with Councilmember Moulton to see if you have anything to report.
Just a couple of things that are mostly public art related. If you, like me, took the opportunity of the long weekend to go totally off grid and missed the online kinetic sculpture in place, it's up on the Kinetic Universe YouTube. So if you want to see a little bit of that kinetic spirit, if you're missing that over Memorial Day weekend, you can go actually watch the whole thing. Another interesting thing, I don't know if this counts as self-promotion, but I hosted a TV show with Keat TV called Studio Space, where we interview local artists. And it has just been it was just this really fascinating, in-depth picture of a diverse group of really creative people and small business people, people deeply rooted in the culture here. And it's been really interesting. And that is also available to stream online if you go to Keat.org, their website. They're releasing them once a week and then putting them up there to stream. So if you appreciate our vibrant local art scene and want to get to know some of those artists a little bit more, it was a really interesting project and I recommend checking it out. And I just wanted to say, as we are opening up, people are getting a little crazy. And just to put that out there, that just like when we went into lockdown, there was this moment of like, everybody needs to kind of give a little extra consideration because everybody's going through something that could be really scary or really difficult, that as we come out of lockdown, that the same thing applies, and that, you know, people might need just a little bit more room, and we might need to make a little bit more effort as individuals and as citizens to keep the peace ourselves. Whether it's being confronted in public about wearing or not wearing a mask once mandates are lifted, or just how different businesses or organizations are handling their reopening, that this is a great time to really dig into that community spirit and understand that everybody's going to get where we need to go at their own pace. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very nice message. Councilmember Burgell.
Well, I just have a few things. So you mentioned that the Skywalk will be opening. The grand opening is going to be on the 4th. And just to let the public know, there are going to be subject meeting talks all weekend at the zoo. So if you're over there and you get an opportunity, you can check in and learn something new, which is always fun. They are also having yoga classes on the platform, yoga class on the platform, and forest bathing. Both of those things are currently sold out, but hopefully we'll be having more of that. That's just going to be an amazing, amazing feat. I attended Outer Ruminations, which was this amazing magical experience that happened out in Table Bluff. It was just, I just don't have a word for it. It was magical. And I just saw so many things I could identify with on a personal level and on, you know, on a greater level. I got to celebrate Happy Donuts with Michelle Whiteley, Mondays with Michelle. Business of the Year, she's always a kick. And then lastly, I'm just going to keep saying it. I'm going to bring it up again. But, if we did one good deed a day, everybody in the city, that's 27,000 good deeds in one day. That's 27,000, could be more than that, but I'm just being, I'm not trying to overextend the numbers or anything. So anyway, the month of June, that would be 30 days. If everybody did one good deed, just one, I mean, Jesus, smile at somebody for God's sake, 810,000 good deeds. And you know what? We deserve it. We have been through hell this last year, and it's important for us to treat each other right and well. We have a new opportunity to make a difference and to make things the way we want them. And I'm hopeful that people will consider that as they go about their day. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Castellano.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Let's see. Life continues to be busy. Let's see, what all have I done? I hosted the monthly regional arts leadership meeting where we focused on what our different organizations are doing to address diversity, equity, and inclusion. Continue to participate in the Community Economic Resilience Consortium calls and working on housing. And I attended the Local Governments Commission Policy Roundtable. That was pretty interesting, different policy leaders throughout the state. I also attended the Cal Cities Redwood Empire Division meeting. And I usually don't talk about things that I've done that are kind of maybe outside, like this is what I'm doing for council, but I did I did create a new festival with a group of artists, and I just really want to appreciate all of the people who came out and the 30 plus artists who believed in trying something new and different. And the point of this festival was to kind of bring Humboldt County's like beautiful kind of wild vistas together with site-specific artists and art. And I think it's something that will actually, we're planning to do it again next year. And I think it will, continue to like bring people, to Humboldt County and also just nourish the artists we have here. The funds we raise will be going to the artists. So, I'm happy to be contributing to our, the economic vitality, of people in our community. That's my kitten. And then let's see, I also, I've been doing this project with Marnie Atkins from the Wiyot tribe and Lara Munoz from Arcata Playhouse and Stephanie Klein, a local ecologist at Alice Burney School the past few weeks and this week. And mostly I want to bring it up because just the students and the principal and the teachers at Alice Burney School are also amazing. And I know we have, fantastic educators here in our community, but I just want to give a shout out to them. Everyone works so hard there for the well-being of their students. And I'm just really deeply appreciative of all of the work that, everyone there is doing for, these awesome kids that live in Eureka. So just thank you to them. And, if you haven't appreciated a teacher recently, like do so soon because they're just really caring for our kids. And then lastly, I guess two things. I'm kind of looking at putting on a town hall on June 17th, Thursday in the evening. I'll figure out the format. That's something to contemplate, I guess, with the way things are changing. And then also, Synapsis is going to be hosting 6 weeks of free community dance and drum classes beginning this Saturday from 12 to 3 in front of Synapsis. And those are free for they're all ages. I hope lots of local kids come out and participate. Should be just something really positive for the community. And that's what I've been up to.
All righty. And Scott Bauer.
Thank you. Yeah, lots of meetings. Cal Cities was great. I think I want to highlight though the RCEA, Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting. As you probably all are aware, the wind turbines are coming. The federal government, state government, they're gonna pour a lot of money into alternative energy, and Humboldt County is going to be ground zero, it seems like, for not only producing energy from wind off the coast, but building a port to ship it all over the West Coast. So that to me was one of the coolest things I've heard in a long time. And it could happen really fast, which for us, the economic development behind that, the jobs, the clean energy, is super exciting and a great thing for our community. So, next couple of years, I think be ready, because we're going to be moving fast and be one of the leaders on the West Coast for energy development, for clean energy development. So super exciting. And it's been a real pleasure to be on that board and see what we're doing. And we're actually helping contribute to the environmental documents and everything. So good things happening, and nice positive thing to think about, especially when it's 108 in Reading today and everybody's baking in unusual heat. All the more imperative that we get moving on alternative energy. So stay tuned. It's going to be good for the planet and good for our community. That's it. Thank you.
All righty. And that is our final report. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting and hope you all have a great rest of your short week. Bye, y'all.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone.